Welcome to postseason baseball. The Chicago White Sox begin their march to the World Series. Here to recap the big moments and analyzing the critical decisions is your favorite source of Chicago White Sox talk. This is the Sox Machine postseason show with your hosts, Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome everyone to Sox Machine Live on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Sox Machine. I am Josh Nelson, alongside the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. It's Jim Margulis, as we are recapping Game 1 of the American League Divisional Series between the Chicago White Sox and the Houston Astros. And it's not a good start for the 2021 postseason for the Chicago White Sox, as they lose Game 1 6-1 at Houston. And Jim, I chuckle because there are a few narratives coming into this game, just looking at the numbers. And it ends up being that the narratives still hold true when analyzing these two teams, the White Sox and Astros.
That is true. And, in the recap, I tried to maybe not put a positive spin, but some positive context, saying last year at the start of the 2020 Wild Card Series, the White Sox had the favorable script. They had Lucas Giolito. They were facing Jesus Luzardo, a lefty. They went undefeated against lefties. It looked like the game they should have won. They won it pretty convincingly, 4-1, but it was a game that was not really in doubt. Giolito handled business the entire time, and they piled on runs early against Luzardo. It was fine. And then Oakland won the next two, and that was it. So that's kind of how I look at this game, is that the White Sox, if the White Sox needed to win this game to stand a chance in the series, like say if they were throwing their version of Lucas Giolito and the rotation drops off after him, then I would say, oops. Maybe we should open up the second half of our October plans. But in this case, it would have helped if they won it. It would have helped if they had a stronger showing against McCullers, because they'll see him again probably before the series is over. But they could afford to lose this one, or they could plan around a loss and try to rally with game 2. And if they come out of Houston with one win in the 2 games, they're still in good shape.
Yeah, and looking at the box score for Game 1 of the Chicago White Sox against the Houston Astros, Tim Anderson and Yoan Moncada, they both picked up hits. Yoan Moncada reached base twice as he had a hit and a single. Jose Abreu, who's questionable for this game, but Tony La Russa put him in the lineup. He was a DH. He went 2 for 4. He drove in the only run for the White Sox. Yasmani Grandal went 0 for 4 with the strikeout. Luis Robert reached base 3 times. He had 2 hits and was hit by a pitch. Eloy Jimenez, we'll get to him in a moment. He was 1 for 4, and he struck out twice looking. Gavin Sheets went 0 for 4. Adam Engel went 0 for 4. And Lurie Garcia went 0 for 3. So for the White Sox bottom third, as we spoke about on the Twitter Space pregame show, hoping they would get some offense, the White Sox got no offense from the bottom third as they went combined 0 for 11. Looking at the White Sox offensive effort, because I think when recapping this game, and we'll get to Lance Lynn and Lance McCullers and how well McCullers threw against the White Sox in a moment. But this is where our fear was, if the White Sox season doesn't end in a World Series title, it's going to be because the offense, which has been feast or famine for a while, is going to have a day like we saw today. They had plenty of base runners. They had 9 base runners in this game, and they score 1 run. And even in the 7th inning, where they got 3 hits off Lance McCullers finally, they didn't score because of the sequence of the hits. Yasmani Grandal grounds into a double play.
With a Geico ad in the middle.
With a Geico ad in the middle. We'll get to the commercials in a moment during the broadcast. But this is the offensive performance and output today that should scare you as a White Sox fan. Yes, they have a lot of potential, but this is when they're most frustrating, is when they're scattering these opportunities and they're just not able to get that additional hit or get that extra base hit. to do big damage. That's what was missing in game one for the White Sox for me.
Before the game in our Twitter spaces, I think I was the only one to predict a score, and I thought the White Sox would lose 5-2, just based on the matchup, based on what we knew. I kind of felt like Lynn would pitch a little bit better than he did, but also the Astros would bog him down a little bit. Like I was thinking 3 runs over 5 innings, and then maybe the front end of the bullpen gives up something, and a couple runs come late, whether it's at the end of McCullers' start or against the bullpen, but it's just not enough to really put a scare into Houston, and so it just kind of fizzles. So seeing the White Sox perform the way they did against McCullers, where just singles, soft singles, Robert could have actually been 3 for 3. Who knows, that error that he reached on might be called a hit because that was a tough scoring decision by the Houston scorer. But either way, it's just an infield single. That's the case where if it were against, like, say, Framber Valdez or against Jose Urquidy or something like that, then I think you would be more alarmed at the shape of the production, saying, well, they got to do more damage against pitchers they should handle. But it was McCullers, and he is basically lab designed to shut down the White Sox offense. Like, they can't count on ever seeing a fastball from him. He throws sliders, but he also, he throws sliders and curveballs, but he also gets ground balls at nearly a league leading rate for a starting pitcher. So that's coming from the right side. That's the kind of pitcher that can give the White Sox fits. So it worked out basically the way I thought, and I still I predicted the White Sox to win the series because I still think they have enough to win the series, but I did bank in struggles against McCullers along the way. So that's why I think it's alarming on one hand, because it did materialize the way you thought, and they will have to face McCullers before the series is over again and fare better against him. But because it was McCullers on the mound, I'm not scared or panicking yet. I think Valdez in game 2 should be a lot more indicative of just whether the White Sox offense has really come to play.
Yeah, and let's go into what a lot of people are going to be talking about, and especially the city of Chicago. When talking about game 1, Lance Lynn struggles again against Houston. And looking at the box score of Lance Lynn, he went 3 2/3 innings. He allowed 6 hits, 5 earned runs, 2 walks, and he struck out 4. For the White Sox bullpen, the combination of Reynaldo Lopez, Garrett Crochet, and Jose Ruiz, hat tip to those guys. They only allowed 1 earned run, and that was a home run from Yordan Alvarez off of Lopez. After that home run, they were able to keep Houston at bay, which was impressive and a bit surprising. But Jim, again, the narrative. Lance Lynn has a terrible time against this Houston Astros team. Why do you think it went wrong again for Lynn?
Well, he threw 74 out of 76 pitches for fastballs of some variety, 4-seamer, sinker, cutter. And my guess is that Houston, with its low strikeout rates, good walk rate, league leading in both, or usually league leading or close to it in both, for years running, I'm guessing they're not fazed by it, and they can just string together enough at bats and make him work harder and work outside the zone, or feel like he needs to work on the edges more, versus like a pitcher who just, like with Lynn's stuff, might be theoretically able to throw in the middle of the plate and let the natural movement carry it to the corners or away from the sweet spot. And in his case, just without the threat of like a devastating breaking ball or a really good change of pace that they're on guard for, just the swings might be more comfortable, and they might, they just have a good lineup of hitters 1 through 7, especially when like Maldonado is, Maldonado's 9th. You can overlook him, but like 1 through 7, 1 through 8, they're strong and they get the job done. So I think it just might be a bad matchup for Lynn, to where either he has to go away from his strengths, which is the variety of fastballs. And I guess it's the idea that pitching coaches talk about my strength versus your strength, or my weakness versus your weakness. And Lynn chooses his strength the way that a lot of pitchers do, because generally I think competitors rather go with what they're confident in, but it's hard to make it work against that deep of a lineup for, that, many innings, that many pitches. Eventually, the stress becomes more than he could absorb, and mistakes become amplified, and that's kind of how it unfurled.
Moving forward for Lance Lynn, the individual, because he's still going to have to face this Houston Astros lineup in 2022 and beyond, as long as that he's under contract with the White Sox. You mentioned the strength versus strength, and there could be a little stubbornness. But after this start, do you think that he is going to be willing to make some drastic changes? Because the numbers don't lie. It is bad. It's really bad for Lance Lynn against these Houston Astros hitters.
I think in a 5-game series, where, especially if he's pitching like, say, game 4, game 5, elimination game, I imagine it's easier to change your mind or try something different if it's abundantly clear what you're doing, 3 days before didn't work, or 3 games before didn't work. When you're facing the Astros twice in a year, and maybe they come months apart, it's probably easier to, maybe just write off one bad start as didn't have it that day. Or in the case of his start in Houston, the defense let him down and things snowballed. And in one inning where Moncada threw home and he probably should have taken it out at first, that cost him an extra run. And that's the kind of mistake, the extra out, that he can't really probably absorb or overcome as easily against the Houston lineup that sees him well. It's probably a lot easier just to shrug off those mistakes and try to reframe your competitive mindset months later and trust that your stuff will win out. But I think when you have a start that is pretty clear, it's tough sledding for him with fastballs. I imagine you have to see some kind of concession to that. He's not going to pitch backwards. He's not going to throw like a slider, in the mid 80s and junk ball his way through. I don't think you're going to see that, and probably not wise if he did. But I imagine you'll see some sequences that are different. Some, maybe if not 74 or 76, like maybe 60, 55 out of 76, just more surprise pitches, more maybe get me overs or strike ones to try to give himself into favorable counts versus getting behind good hitters that punish strikes, especially fastball strikes. So that's, I think, what you would see. But it does, I think it does give Tony La Russa some something to think about when it comes to just whether to try to go to Lynn for 2 games or whether to use Dylan Cease and Carlos Rodon on separate days.
Yeah, I'm now in the camp of, I don't think you could have Lance Lynn face the Houston Astros again this series. It's just, that's how much confidence I've lost now watching Lynn struggle a couple times against Houston, and then looking back at his past performances when he was with the Texas Rangers. The Astros have a good book on Lance Lynn. They have a good game plan against Lance Lynn, and it continues to work for them. And I don't know what adjustments Lance Lynn can make in 4 days to give everyone confidence, and maybe confidence for himself and his manager, Tony La Russa, to be trotted out there if this series goes 5 games. And that poses a question that a lot of folks have, is going back to who should have started game 1, Lance Lynn or Lucas Giolito. I know hindsight is 20/20, but do you still think that is a controversy? Do you think that the White Sox made a mistake having Lance Lynn go game 1 against Lance McCullers?
Well, I first guessed, or when I put together a rotation plan, I wanted Giolito pitching game 1 just because I wanted him to have the shot at pitching twice over Lynn, or having the first opportunity to pitch twice in a series if it seemed like a good idea. So I think I'm not second guessing or, doing any kind of revisionist history to say that was my choice. I guess the one silver lining is that you could say that if Giolito pitched well, like through a quality start against the Astros, like 6 innings, 3 runs, that might not have been good enough, especially with the way McCullers pitched. Like maybe you would just be throwing a good start down the drain. You'd have Lynn coming back. You'd have Lynn coming on game 2 and maybe not giving the White Sox a chance against a lesser pitcher, and they lose 6-5 instead of 6-1 or something like that. So the way it worked out, on one hand, 6-1, it's a game where you think, oh, they're outclassed. They got run off the field. But when you look at who they have left, which is Giolito in game 2, and if you liked him for game 1, you should really like him for game 2. That should be a pretty good situation against Framber Valdez. They're still in a good position to leave Houston with 1 win in 2 games, which I think is what they want to do. I think they want to go into that blackout game in game 3, not feeling like their backs up or against the wall, and fans being fully into it, fans not being like say if it's they go into Chicago down 2-0 and Houston scores 3 in the first 2 innings, and the crowd's gonna be knocked out of it. I think if it's 1-1, there's not gonna be that panic in the stands. So I think no matter what order it takes, just getting out of Houston with 1 win is really what's important. And Giolito against Valdez is better suited to do that than Giolito versus McCullers.
Well, for Lance Lynn, we'll see if he makes another start in this divisional series. Moving over to the Houston Astros pitcher, Lance McCullers. He threw over 100 pitches, Jim. And I got asked this question on Twitter, is McCullers going to start game 4 for Houston? I'm not sure. This was a pretty heavy workload. And I guess for Dusty Baker, he felt comfortable having McCullers. He almost went through 7 innings. He went 6 2/3 innings against the White Sox, allowed 4 hits, didn't walk anyone, struck out 4. Not a lot of strikeouts from Lance McCullers in this start against the White Sox. The White Sox were able to put the ball in play, but not make that impressive contact, not hard contact against Lance McCullers. Do you think we could see McCullers again in game 4?
I think it's possible. I think the Houston Astros, I think their depth isn't so dire that they need him to pitch in game 4 if they're up 2-1 and they don't need to win that game. I think they'd rather have him fully rested. But I think back to the ALCS against the Yankees in 2017, where McCullers threw a 4-inning save and just came out of the bullpen and did that. He has some experience coming out of the bullpen, being a fireman, especially in October. So we could see him at some point. Like if it's a slugfest and Dusty Baker feels like it's his best option to get out of that game with McCullers putting out the fire, you could see it. But it would seem like you'd see him if they're down 1-2, not 2-1, especially say if the White Sox offense still can't get it going against lesser pitchers and they're just eking by in the one game they won. I don't think it would be that pressure to use McCullers on short rest. However, I think if the White Sox show up against Valdez like I think they can and show up in the blackout game, the first of the blackout games, I should say, then I think the way I would phrase it is that they're going to face McCullers twice. They should do what they can to make sure the second one is when he's not fully rested, fully recovered, might be compromised, and see if they fare any better that way.
That is true. I mean, I think if McCullers were to come back in game 4, let's say if the White Sox win the next 2 games, and McCullers is going out there to try to save Houston's season to keep it alive, I don't think he throws 103 pitches, especially with his injury history. You put him at risk if you even make it to the American League Championship Series, if you're the Houston Astros, or put him at risk of, suffering injury time in 2022. So I guess the silver lining is that McCullers had a heavy workload today, throwing over 100 pitches when the game was in hand. And I guess we'll see. We'll see. I mean, McCullers is no stranger to pitching on short rest. He's done it before for Houston, but it cost him an entire season due to injury, having that type of heavy workload. So we'll see, but I agree with you, Jim. If McCullers does pitch game 4, I'm thinking maybe 60 pitches, not 100. The way that McCullers throws against the White Sox, that might be good enough for 4 or 5 innings.
Well, for 100 pitches, they were pretty easy. I was surprised this pitch count was that high because he had some single-digit pitch innings. He had 2 of them, in fact. And even then, he was, I think his highest pitch count was maybe 20 something, low 20s. And so he wasn't really stressed at any point. And it wasn't a cumulative stress. He peaked in the middle of a start when it came to pitch counts and then eased up towards the end. So if it's shaped like that to where he's throwing 15 pitches or fewer in an inning, then I could see him just going until he's actually, the White Sox force him out of the game. And right, the way this game unfolded, they didn't force him out into the seventh. And I don't think, McCullers needed to leave the game when he did. Just more of a matter of like, it's the postseason. We're going to need him for starts down the line, so no need to tax him. But if it wasn't game one, or if like say Dusty didn't like his bullpen as much or didn't want to get guys involved in the series to get them some reps, you might have seen McCullers finish that inning. I don't think the workload had much to do with it. But if they can make him, that's why I think if he comes back on short rest and just isn't as sharp, walks two guys, plunks a couple, like then I think you could see like just hoping for 4 or 5 innings from him and then patch it together from there. But this was pretty easy for him, and I don't think it dictated any kind of shortened plan on its face, or like, from the get-go. I think they would just let the White Sox dictate how long he stays in the game. And if it's like this game, he could go 6.
Let's not have that happen.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a critical decision in this game, and it happened in the 4th inning. Houston had a runner on first, and Lynn was now facing the lineup for the 3rd time, the danger zone. And Jose Altuve doubled down the left field line to put runners on 2nd and 3rd with 2 outs. And Michael Brantley was now batting. And we have talked about it often on just how Brantley continues to kill the White Sox in his career, and especially this season in a Houston Astros uniform. And Jim, I find this to be a critical decision because at this point, it was apparent that Lance Lynn didn't have it. Mm-hmm. And this was one of the, situations, especially early in the game, when your starting pitcher is facing the 3rd time to the order. I get it. It's only the 4th inning. But this is a critical decision that I want to bring to the table because even going into tomorrow, let's say if Lucas Giolito struggles and his pitch count is high and he faces the same situation against Michael Brantley, I get it that it's one of your horses in the starting rotation, but this is the postseason. If you have an opportunity to keep it within 3 runs, keep it within 3 runs and bring in the lefty to face Michael Brantley to get out of that jam. I did not understand why La Russa kept Lance Lynn, and of course Brantley singles up the middle, 2 runs scored, and now instead of a 3-run game, it's a 5-run lead for Houston, and it really pops the balloon of enthusiasm for all White Sox fans watching the game. Did La Russa mismanage that situation in the 4th inning?
That's a case where if they're looking at Brantley's first 2 at-bats where he had like an ordinary weak ground ball for a routine out, then bunted the 2nd time through, which was unusual, like just understood the idea of trying to bunt for a hit, but it didn't work and gave away an at-bat. And Brantley's coming off a knee issue, and he's had a pretty mediocre, at best, August and September, and Alex Bregman's behind him. Like, under those conditions, I can see where pitching to Brantley makes more sense than usually does on its face. I think the one thing watching that single go through, like he got a single on the ground, is well hit, but it was, on the ground. The problem might have been with runners on 2nd and 3rd and not being able to shift the defense the way they might when the bases are empty, when you have 3 infielders on the right side. Like it went through a hole that probably Tim Anderson's at if there's only a runner on first. That's a case where maybe it just doesn't make sense there because the odds of a hit are so much greater when you can't have your defense shaped exactly how you want to thwart Brantley's ground ball tendencies. So it made some sense just based on the contact not being great, or the contact being in the ground. Like he's not getting around the balls. He's not really, hasn't been a threat at the plate for a few weeks now. So that's why I think it made more sense than usual. But it does speak, I think, going forward, when it comes to, like, let's say Lance Lynn, that's the kind of at bat where you point to say, like, well, what's the point of this guy pitching twice in this series? Just that's kind of that you go back to and say, nah, it's just if he doesn't get swings and misses in the zone, or can't get pop-ups, or just, on those situations where he needs a strikeout and he's not going to get the swings and misses, like, I think you need probably a guy who gets more swings and misses, more pop-ups, especially with a guy like Brantley. So that's, I think, where, like you said, either going to a lefty like Crochet early gets it done, or walking him and facing Bregman with the bases loaded. I think that's another option, which isn't great, but at least you get the handedness on your side. You get the you don't have Brantley hitting to an unshifted side of the field, which I think is benefits Brantley more than maybe Bregman, who has a normal defensive alignment, and having the runners on base doesn't really affect anything. So that's, I think, the one thing that, having seen it play out the way it did, made me think, maybe do that differently one way or another, just because of how open that right side was. But Brantley itself, just his recent condition, looking at his numbers, like, doesn't quite scare me the way he did during the regular season. So I understand, like, if they want to attack him, but maybe Lynn's just not the guy third time through who can really be counted on to attack the Astros.
And that's why I keep saying it's the third time Lynn is facing Brantley. And the third time he faces Altuve, he doubles down the left field line. And it's just clear that he doesn't have it. Especially with what we saw in the previous two innings, where the struggle started to come and Houston was getting into a rhythm facing Lynn a second time through the order. That's where La Russa, and I get it, Lynn is one of your aces. He's one of your workhorses. You want to continue to ride him as far as you can. But I feel like that was a situation that Garrett Crochet needs to come in. And Crochet did come in a similar situation, facing a lefty with 2 outs, and didn't get the job done, and that extended his outing. So it's not saying that Crochet would have gotten the job done.
Yeah, that was Brantley.
Yeah, that was Brantley.
Yeah.
But in that particular situation, that's when I think La Russa should have pulled Lynn. Because if you do get a ground ball that's hit directly at Garcia, or a strikeout if it is Crochet, walking out of that situation, only being down 3-0, still gives you hope within the game that maybe the White Sox bullpen can capitalize against the Houston Astros bullpen. But yeah, that was the one critical decision, because outside of that, I mean, Houston won comfortably today against the Chicago White Sox 6-1. And really all the White Sox can do, and maybe White Sox fans, is just flush this game down the toilet, just chalk it up to the White Sox have a terrible time against Lance McCullers, and the Houston Astros have a great time against Lance Lynn, and hope for better things in game 2, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But I can't help but talk about this particular topic, and it's the broadcast itself, Jim. Do you like commercials? Because if you do, this was the baseball broadcast for you.
Yeah, it's like they during the games when they have like the 2 screens, and they have the commercial playing on one between pitches. It's almost like having been in online media and just seeing just how they try, how online ads just try to shove stuff over content, just like, oh, maybe let's just have this pop out over the article you're reading, and the revenue will be enough to annoy your readers. It felt like those innings felt like bad websites, just, ads just jumping out over what you were watching, and you can't find the X to click off them. So seeing the I forget what ads were in the first inning. I just remember because that was when I was still trying to figure out if like my streaming was working.
Everyone was doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, is just like my connection not great? So do I need to reset my router? So that's what I thought was what was dealing with. But yeah, by the time the Geico lizard popped up over Grandal's double play, that's when I realized, like, this is still going on.
You know what? It was perfect, though, because as soon as I saw that ball hit to Altuve on the ground and it's Grandal running, it's like, oh, this is a double play. And it pops up the Geico. I'm like, perfect. I don't need to see this car accident, because I know how this ends. Maybe
they thought they could squeeze in an ad before Grandal got down the first base line.
Oh man, just terrible. Not a good broadcast for Fox Sports 1. There's a lot about the job that Adam Amin and AJ Pierzynski did. I thought they did a good job. the White Sox are not giving them a lot to talk about positively, especially early in that game. And there's a lot of people that are like, well, they're like Houston homers. I want everybody to stop and think about that for a moment. AJ Pierzynski, okay, not a Houston homer. Adam Amin is the voice of the Chicago Bulls, and he comes from Addison, Illinois. They're not Houston homers. It's just that the Astros were giving them more things to talk about, and they're trying to be, balanced during the broadcast. If the White Sox started hot, it would have been flipped, and Houston people would have been really upset, and they would have figured out, oh, it's two Chicago guys calling the game. So,
it was.
No
I thought they were
problems
fine.
about that.
I thought, I think Pierzynski is pretty good, and I like that he follows up in his own thoughts, like he, kind of goes along with sequences and tries to anticipate, like Stone does, trying to anticipate the good pitches, calling them as what he would call, and then following up into why it worked or why it didn't. I'm looking at the comments, and in the first inning, Amin got off to a shaky start when he said that the White Sox defense had below average numbers because Robert was absent and also Jimenez wasn't out there and left either. And I thought, that's not quite right. And then he's going around the horn and said Engel is decent and right. And Engel missing half the season did more to damage the White Sox outfield metrics more than anything else. So he had that out of order, but over the course of the rest of the game, I didn't notice anything terribly off information wise. And that's generally what I go with. Like if they're wrong about the White Sox, then I can't trust what they're saying about Houston because I don't know Houston as well. So I'm counting on them delivering good information based on what I'm using the White Sox as their bar for the kind of research they've done. And outside of the first stumble where I thought this could be shaky, like if they start emphasizing the quality of Jimenez's defense and going from there. But ultimately it was fine. They were easy enough to ignore, if anything else, which I think is also a positive. I think if you can tune them out and just focus on the action and the pitch sequences and contact and defensive alignments and such, and the camera show you what you want to see, I think that's more or less the idea. And that's why TBS, watching the wild card game between the Dodgers and Cardinals, that's why that was so frustrating because the camera work on TBS is generally terrible. And Fox, as much as people might complain about Fox, because I think it's just, they own October baseball and everybody's paying attention and nitpicking every mistake. Generally they do a pretty good job with cameras, angles, ample viewings of what you want to see. So having those ads pop up was really uncharacteristic and sloppy of them and what you normally don't see from them. Usually you see that for TBS or ESPN or the other, the channels, maybe MLB Network, that just don't have that many games and high profile games at that.
Yeah, the next broadcast for the White Sox, which feeds into Game 2, and we're going to talk about that now. A little bit of a preview of the preview, because again, for those that are on Twitter, Jim and I will be hosting a Twitter Spaces pregame show. That's going to be at 12 p.m. Central Time, Friday, October 8th, so follow us on Twitter. We'll be doing that live an hour before the game, getting really into the weeds and breaking down Game 2 of the American League Divisional Series. But Game 2 is going to be on MLB Network. If you don't have MLB Network, this has been a very popular question as of late. YouTube TV and Fubo TV, Fubo, they are having free week trials, and they both carry MLB Network on their basic subscription. So I recommend that you go sign up for YouTube TV or Fubo TV. So you get MLB Network and have it for a day so you can watch Game 2, or go to your favorite drinking establishment that has cable or satellite and carries MLB Network so you can see Game 2 between the Chicago White Sox and the Houston Astros. And Bob Costas will be the play-by-play guy for MLB Network for Game 2 between the White Sox and Astros.
Yeah, that could be worse than Costas could be worse than Amin from what he can, especially with Tony La Russa. The combination of Costas and Tony La Russa could have a lot of kind of grumpy old men type information going over the air. So as much as people might have criticized him, I don't know if Costas is an improvement. So beware. But yeah, I will be doing the
Costas is a yeah. Watching some of the Friday night broadcasts, it's bad when it's Costas and John Smoltz.
Yeah,
then you get two old guys.
Who's with Costas?
One second. I do not know. Game 2 ALDS. Oh man. All right. This makes for riveting.
Yes.
Jim Cott and Buck Showalter.
Cott's
Jim
okay.
Cott and Buck Showalter calling the game.
But still, you're going to have a bunch of guys in LaRussa's demographic probably, and Dusty Baker's too. You could have a lot of launch angle. Why do they sell out for the homer type stuff? That could be a little bit grating. So beware for that if you don't like. But hopefully, the idea will be that the White Sox will have better at bats in the first innings of the game to actually give the broadcast booth something to actually praise.
All right, so game 2 between the Chicago White Sox and the Houston Astros. Again, first pitch is going to be at 1:07 p.m. Central Time, and I'm sure we'll get the White Sox lineup at 12:30 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, because we only got it within an hour of the first pitch for today's game 1. Lucas Giolito and against Framber Valdez. Let's get ahead of this talking point now, Jim. Is this a must-win game for the White Sox?
Technically, no. They don't have to. I try to avoid using must-win just because you can use it a lot. You can overuse it, and all of a sudden, you have a must-win game in August to get out of a funk when they're leading the AL Central by 7 games. I saw that pop up then, so it's. I would say on a scale of, I guess I rate must wins on a scale of 1 to 10. This one's like an 8.5.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, it is pretty high just because I think it decides whether you see McCullers in a compromised state or not.
Okay.
If Houston comes to Chicago leading 2-0, they have their pick of how they want to deploy their pitchers the rest of the way. They have the upper hand. The White Sox will be the ones scrambling. And then just any, when it comes Dylan Cease or Carlos Rodon or whoever starts those games, any bad inning could decide the series. So it's up there. It's not a must win because they can, I think if you say must win and they lose, then we're going to talk about for game 3, just be this just be spending entire time just moping and hitting our heads on our desk. So that's why, you don't want to paint yourself in the corner calling it a must win. So I'd rather use the numerical scale for that. So I'd say 8.5 out of 10.
All right. Well, that's still pretty high. And I do agree with you. It is of utmost importance for the White Sox to win game 2 so they can steal one from Houston and they can go back home with an opportunity with 2 home games to clinch the series at their home ballpark. If they go down 2-0, you're going to hear a lot of, maybe the blackout game is going to be a funeral instead of a big party. And I really don't want to talk about that.
That's how it was in 2008. And they did stay alive for one more game. So at least it wasn't a complete bummer.
Right. So I'm hoping that Lucas Giolito really comes out, has a strong outing for the White Sox. But again, this is all about the White Sox offense. They have to start quicker. They got to score early against the Houston Astros and add some pressure because I thought they had good at-bats against the Houston relievers. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to see them get into the bullpen a lot quicker than they did today against the Houston Astros. But again, first pitch for that game is going to be at 1:07 p.m. Central Time. The game broadcast is going to be on MLB Network. Jim and I will be hosting a Twitter Spaces pregame show at 12 p.m. Central Time. We will have Sox Machine live Friday night to recap game 2. Saturday is the day off, and we'll have the pregame again on Twitter Spaces. Sunday, even though it is a 7 p.m. Central Time start, that Twitter Space pregame is going to be at 4 p.m. to give everyone an opportunity to make it to the stadium in time to get to their seats before first pitch. for the blackout game, and it'll be a late night for Jim and I, but we'll be back on Sunday night, maybe Monday morning around midnight
Because
for
we
Sox
care.
Machine Live, because we do care. We are nervous because we care, Jim. That's what I learned about Tony La Russa. If you're nervous, it's because you care, and that is important. Hopefully the White Sox get a little bit extra nervous for tomorrow, and they can channel that nervous energy to positive energy, and they have a quick start against the Houston Astros in Game 2 and be able to take one away from Houston before coming home. We look forward to speaking with everyone tomorrow. Thank you to everyone that watched the live stream on our YouTube page at youtube.com/SoxMachine. And if you are not following us on Twitter, you can do so at SoxMachine. You can follow me on Twitter at SoxMachine_Josh. And if you don't get an opportunity to watch the live stream on YouTube, we take the audio recording of every stream and upload it into our podcast feed, which you can subscribe to the Sox Machine podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're a fan of our work and want more, you can support us at patreon.com/SoxMachine, where we have several different tiers of support as our Patreon supporters get exclusive content. They also get an ad-free version of both the podcast and website, and they get the first opportunity to purchase any of our new Sox Machine swag, like the Sox Machine ball cap and the Sox Machine pint glasses. So if you are interested and want more, go to patreon.com/SoxMachine to sign up today. Sox Machine Live is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball. Alongside Jim Margulis, I am Josh Nelson. Thanks for watching and listening.